All right, hello, Honors 100. So for today's class, I've a bunch of housekeeping stuff I want to go over, and then we'll do one small exercise. It'll be sort of interesting in this online format. So first off, in terms of course feedback surveys, my understanding is everyone should have received an email with a link to complete a survey about this course and about me. I strongly encourage you to complete that as soon as you're able. Rest assured, I can't see that feedback until after I've processed final grades for everyone. But I encourage you to do it sooner than later, mostly just so you don't forget about it kind of in the rush of the end of the semester. I do read that feedback pretty carefully and take it into account. And so really appreciate you taking the time to give me some of your thoughts there. I have shifted up things like specific readings or some of the assignment structure based on feedback I've received on surveys like this in the past. And so, again, I do take it pretty seriously. I do like to consider everyone's thoughts in that regard. And obviously, you're welcome to comment on whatever you like. But I would especially be interested to hear any feedback folks have related to our transition to online instruction for this class. Obviously, there are pieces of things I probably would have done differently if I'd known we were going to be online or if we were online for the whole semester. But there are also some pieces that are pretty up in the air to me. I'm not sure if I would have done them any differently. And so I am really interested to hear kind of feedback in terms of what people thought. One of the considerations, for example, is I went with the online discussion threads as our primary mode of communicating, kind of bouncing ideas. And I'm interested, if that worked for folks or if people had thoughts around that. I made the choice for us to go completely asynchronous in our instruction. So unless you scheduled to meet with me individually, all of our instruction was me posting video lectures or posting written thoughts, and you all replying in the discussion thread kind of when you were able to, right, within a week or so's parameters. And so I know different professors approach that in different ways. I am interested in hearing your thoughts. Again, and I just kind of try to look at things cumulatively. It seems like by and large people liked it, or it seems like it worked to me and to most students. I probably wouldn't change things up all that much. But if I overwhelmingly hear that everyone thought that aspect of the course was terrible and they would really wish it had been different, that's tough feedback to ignore. So I definitely would take that into consideration for the future. My hope is that I won't be teaching online again in the immediate future, but everything's pretty uncertain at this point, right? We don't know what's going to happen yet for summer session 3, which is when I'm next slated to teach a class for the Honors College here. And certainly in the fall semester, I hope that everything's back in person, but we just don't know at this point, right? So in any event, I do appreciate that feedback just kind of to guide me for the future and any other thoughts you might have. Okay, so for my next point, in regards to the creative nonfiction assignment, so obviously the due date for that is approaching quite rapidly. So I'm recording and hopefully posting this a good bit early, a full day in advance. But remember that the due date for this is Tuesday, April 28th, now at 11:59 p.m. So just to go over again some of the finer points of this. Again, expectation is for this to be a 4 to 5 page assignment. A significant amount of that, though, can be using visuals, using images, using charts and diagrams, using photographs, anything along those lines, being creative with your layout, so on and so forth. I do still ask for roughly the equivalent of about 3 pages of actual writing. So make sure that it's not just sort of, written in such a way that's like 1 word per page or something like that. That doesn't really cut it for this assignment. But especially if you're making thoughtful and kind of creative use of more visual aspects, I definitely take that into account, and you can certainly get full credit for those aspects of this assignment. I'm really looking forward to seeing what students do with that. Again, you can include a process memo up to a page where you basically explain what creative choices you were making, what was going on with this project. That's especially valuable if you think that I just might not get it, right? While I like to think that I'm fairly in tune with what most of you are thinking and the kind of things that you're writing about, I recognize that especially if you're playing with something from pop culture or something from your specific unique culture itself, or otherwise something that I might not entirely follow, it's a good opportunity just to be able to explain what's going on, or if the piece ended up shorter, why you made those choices. Any of that kind of stuff is fair game for that process memo to help you get to that minimum length requirement. And again, if you would like to send me a specific page from your assignment, and it could be a little over a page, a little under a page. I'm not going to police that too closely as long as it's roughly a double space page worth of content, however you're visually presenting it for a page or so. But if you want to share that with me separately via an email or a Canvas message, I will share that with the class along with video or audio of you basically reading and or discussing what you have shared. And if you do that, you're eligible to earn 3 extra points on this assignment, still up to the total of 15 points for the overall assignment. I'll be pretty transparent. Any student in the past who has taken me up on this option has ended up earning full credit for this assignment. I like to think it's a relatively easy way to get there. To be fully transparent, I just think it's sort of a fun thing to do at the end of the semester. A lot of you have seen each other's work in a more academic sense through the peer review exercises we've done in class and whatnot. But this is an assignment that sort of invites you to, show more of yourself or something that you're really interested in. And I think it's a really great way to end the class for us to be able to share that with each other. So I strongly encourage, invite you to do that. Again, to share an extra page of this thing with me. Again, via email or Canvas around the same due date of, the 11:59 Tuesday, April 28th. Again, and also share with me a video or audio recording. You can upload a file directly to Canvas or send it to me or share it via Google Docs or upload it to YouTube and send me a link there. I'm really wide open on kind of the format with which you share it. But as long as you do something like that by the due date, you're eligible for that extra credit. And my vision is that we'll spend most of our final classes just incrementally sharing 2 or 3 or 4 of these per class period to kind of round out the class with this. I'll have some plan B options in mind to still use the class time constructively if we don't have very many students who are willing to share. But I hope most, if not all of you, will take me up on this. Again, I think just kind of a enriching and kind of fun way to end the class, and there is some substantial credit attached to it that I think makes it worth your while. But okay, let me check my notes here. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to mention by way of housekeeping is for reading response journals. I've had a few students ask me where we're supposed to be on journals because they're not entirely sure if they're completely caught up or they're worried because it looks like there's an extra slot more for journal submissions than there are readings. So what I want to assure folks is if you have a minimum of 17 journal entries submitted by the end of the semester, I will accept late work right up until May 12th during finals week. If you've reached at least 17 that you have earned a complete score on, rest assured you're eligible for full credit for that aspect of the course, or very close to it. If you've done 17 but you had feedback from me a couple times where I was like, this doesn't really meet expectations, I'll give you some benefit of the doubt, but make sure you're doing a little more for future entries. You might want to make sure you have 18 just to kind of shore up your score. But for the majority of you who have gotten completes and gotten positive feedback on some of those entries, 17 will be the magic number to make sure you earn full credit for that aspect of the class. There should be more spaces, and many of you, I think if you were completely kept up, if I'm counting correctly, it should have been 19 total entries if you did it the way I envisioned. I know some people double submitted or submitted an extra exercise I hadn't really meant as a journal response, so you might have more entries in. But yeah, I encourage you to still keep up with the journal entries. We do have one more reading coming up for our last day of class, and I would still welcome and encourage journal entries for that. But if you've already hit 17 or 18, Richard, you don't need to do that for the sake of your grade. You've already met your obligation and can expect full credit for that aspect of the class. So I hope that makes sense for everyone. I know it can be a little bit confusing. Basically, I constructed it such that students could miss 1 or 2 readings or not completely meet expectations for 1 or 2 of those and still earn full credit or very close to it. That's kind of my objective here, because I recognize life happens, and especially with the strange transition online, things were a little bit out of the ordinary. So if you missed one, that wouldn't be the end of the world for you. But yeah, I hope that overall makes sense to folks. So for our last thing for this class, I want to do an exercise where I've never done this in an online format before. It's going to be a little strange in this format, but I think it'd still be kind of fun. So what I like to use one of these late classes in the semester for is to talk about op-eds. Op-eds are officially a term. It's OP space ED. And what it actually means is opposite the editorial page is what it's short for. This used to be a space where in printed newspapers, it still is actually, I shouldn't say used to, it's just that hardly any of us really read print newspapers anymore, I don't think. But the idea is that there's an editorial page which was usually dedicated to opinion pieces from the newspaper itself, which were often things that the main core editors of the paper had kind of come to agreement on or were making a firm stance on. And the opposite editorial page would be a space where it could be more individual opinions, be it from the newspaper staff or be it from just kind of the community wanting to submit letters to the editor sort of about a local issue they felt isn't being addressed by the paper appropriately, or responding to an article that was published previously, or anything along those lines. So in earlier versions of this class, when I've taught other institutions, I've actually had an op-ed assignment where I asked students to write basically a one-page argument that kind of uses the tools we developed through writing our academic essays over the course of the semester, but targeted specifically to an audience that's relevant to you. And so I would say, think about the different groups that you belong to. We're all kind of people who are, currently involved in a college environment, currently affiliated with UNLV. And so, it could be that kind of community. If you're a video game player, it could be the gamer community. If you're a fan of a specific sport, it might apply to that community. But to write kind of that one-page argument, to your community, to your specific audience. So that isn't an assignment for this course. So doing this exercise is a little bit less kind of intuitive, because usually I use this as kind of a brainstorming kind of way of getting ready for that assignment. But I still found that even if there's not an assignment attached to it, this can be something that students sort of have some interest and some fun in. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to reply in the discussion thread with your thoughts on the question of what should change about UNLV. And so just to give you some general ideas of kinds of things you can think about, things like course offerings, things like parking, right? The availability of parking, the costs affiliated with parking, locations of parking lots and garages. It can be things like the fitness center and kind of what materials it has available. It can be things about like study abroad opportunities. It can be about kind of that free speech space where on the main stretch of classroom buildings where oftentimes people are tabling and kind of shouting things at you. What's good or not so good about that, or what should change about that. So again, the central crux being what should change about UNLV. I think this whole online instruction mode that we've all kind of had to adjust to for the second half of the semester opens up some other opportunities for things we should talk about, like has UNLV handled that transition well? Have individual professors handled that well? Is it the same value of education? What should be done about that? It's all just kind of just food for thought. So I'm just giving you some general ideas. Dining options is another one that often comes up in these discussions, but just kind of what you think of all this, right? What should change about the way UNLV kind of operates from a administrative, from a faculty, from a staff, from even a student perspective, things that we feel like should change. So I welcome you to chime in on the discussion thread just to kind of discuss that point, to raise multiple ideas. You don't need to write a full essay for this, obviously, right? Feel free to just kind of bullet point list ideas, or if it's something you're not sure students will know what you're talking about, you can give a little bit more context to explain what you're talking about. And then I welcome you to engage in a discussion, because that's usually the part of this that in person gets especially fun, because sometimes you'll kind of snowball and one thing will build to another, or alternatively people will have really strong conflicting opinions. And it's often about kind of small, relatively petty things, right? So it's not like we're necessarily trying to change the world, especially when we limit our scope just to UNLV. But I think we do come up with just sort of interesting things. It's like, oh yeah, I never really even thought about that, but that is annoying, right? Or that should change, to kind of spark a little bit of critical thinking about our immediate community. So I'll look forward to seeing what people come up with in the discussion thread here, and all the more so I'll look forward to seeing what you all do with your creative nonfiction submissions coming up very soon. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.